You ever have one of those days where a simple question just flips your whole world? That's how it started. Professor Gerald Whitmore standing alone in his Harvard office, window fogged, mug of coffee stone cold, staring down at the entrance exam he'd spent weeks perfecting, only to pause at the very last question, a relic from some dusty archive, known only in whispered math department legends. They called it Collat's conjecture. Looked harmless. Just a little if even, divide by 2, if odd, triple it, and add 1 repeat. But it was wild, untamed, and no one, not even the people who get buildings named after them, had ever solved it. Gerald just sighed, muttered, "No one's going to touch this," and crumpled the page like it was nothing. But see, one man's trash really is another's treasure, especially if you're a 14-year-old named Ellie Moore, shuffling through Harvard's halls with shoes that had seen better days, ink-stained fingers, and no business being anywhere near the faculty lounge. Ellie's story wasn't the kind that got written up in admissions essays. Her parents were gone. Her grandma Ruth was just scraping by mopping classrooms. Ellie helped, partly because she loved her grandma, partly because those marble hallways made her feel like she belonged to a bigger story, even if her name wasn't on any doors. So that night, she's fishing clean paper out of the recycling bin. Every bit counts when you're counting pennies. She finds the crumpled page, smooths it out, reads the rules simple, almost mocking. She's seen it before, buried in some battered math book behind a closed tutoring center. That old book smelled like basement and ambition, and for Ellie, it was a quiche played with the sequence before, watch numbers collapse and spiral, always landing back in the same spot like magic. This page, though, Harvard letterhead and all, was sacred. Ellie crouches, grabs a piece of cardboard, and instead of numbers, she draws movement arrows, loops, the hidden dances numbers make. She doesn't even notice she's smiling. For her, numbers don't talk, they dance. Sometimes they stumble, but always, always, they come home. There's something beautiful about that, don't you think? That no matter how crazy the path, it ends the same. The world quiets down, hallway lights flicker, everyone else is gone, but Ellie's still listening, head buzzing with the sense that something ancient is hiding in that trash paper. Just as she's really sinking into it, Ruth's voice calls her back to reality. "Ellie, you ready to go?" She tucks the page in her bag, gives the bin a little grin, and heads home, not knowing she just saved a puzzle Harvard had given up on. That night, Ruth's making tea, humming a tune that feels older than the building itself, and Ellie sprawled on the floor, question in hand. Why do they all end the same way? She doesn't have an answer, but sometimes the asking's what matters, you know? Morning comes, and while the city's already screaming with noise, Ellie's world is quiet, still inside the puzzle, copying that rule again and again, watching numbers zig and zag like they're trying to outsmart her. But it's not chaos. It's a song she can almost hum, even if she doesn't know the words. Back at Harvard, while professors are busy scribbling on napkins and chasing tenure, Ellie sneaks into an old seminar room, the one with the chalkboard that runs the length of the wall. She draws again, not equations, but trails and paths, places where everything converges, her own map of a hidden forest. At some point, she circles a spot, writes "Y" beside it, then steps back, seeing not math but motion life. Cue the first twist, maintenance comes knocking. Ellie panics, wipes half the board, dashes out, but not before leaving a ghost of her work behind. Next day, a janitor notices the faded diagram, erases it like he's supposed to, but for some reason, the number 27, underlined 3 times, sticks with him. Upstairs, Professor Whitmore can't shake the feeling he tossed something valuable. He wonders, just for a second, what if someone found it, but pushes it away? After all, who'd care about a forgotten riddle? Down in the library loading dock, Ellie's sketching again. This time, she starts from 41, tracks not just the steps, but how the chains of numbers fold into each other, like jumping between double Dutch ropes. It isn't neat, but it lines up if you're patient, if you really listen. And for the first time, Ellie wonders, what if this isn't just a pattern? What if it's a message? Professor Whitmore gets a weird call from janitorial. "Professor, you ever teach the Collat's problem? One of my guys found some serious work on the board. The number 27 again, his old nemesis." Suddenly, he's digging up old notebooks, memories, wondering if someone else is out there chasing the same ghost. Ellie, for her part, has no idea anyone's noticed. She just keeps drawing, more for herself than anyone else, asking new questions like, where do the numbers slow down? She's discovering something no textbook ever taught, patterns that aren't just patterns, but memories, rest points where the chaos pauses. She writes a letter to whoever threw away the question, says she's not trying to solve it, just wants to understand its dance. Signs it E. Never mails it, but Ruth finds it, tucks it away with a candle. Sometimes a grandmother's faith is stronger than 1,000 faculty meetings. Eventually, Professor Whitmore finds her traces strange diagrams, loops, symbols that don't belong in any curriculum. He leaves a question on the board. Who are you? The room waits, open just a crack. Ellie finds it, reads the question, whispers back. I'm no one. But the room, like the universe, knows better. Then comes the meeting. Walter, the night custodian, spots Ellie back at work. Whitmore finally sees her. Green hoodie, hair pulled back, hands covered in chalk dust, drawing rivers across a page. She looks up, scared, apologizes for being in the wrong place, but Whitmore doesn't scold her. He asks her to show him what she's found. She calls her convergence points, hinges, the places where the motion of numbers slows, no matter where they started. He listens, really listens. And suddenly, it's not about credentials, it's about curiosity. Ellie spends the next day standing in front of a dozen professors, some skeptical, some amazed, drawing out her sequences, explaining how numbers breathe. She doesn't use fancy terms, just shows what she sees. And sure, some people snicker, but one old professor, glasses slipping down his nose, just says quietly, that's not wrong. Ellie walks out into the cold afterward, asks Whitmore if she messed up. He just smiles and tells her that saying something true is rarer than saying something impressive, especially in rooms like that. Meanwhile, Harvard's gears start turning. Committees, emails, talk of mentors, donor showcases. They want to make her a star, but Ruth warns her, they'll use your voice before you learn how to protect it. So Ellie does the one thing no one expects. She disappears. Not to hide, but to build. She claims an old garage, makes her own board, tapes up her diagrams, draws in color, lets silence and music fill the space. She's building something. Nawawal, a language, a sanctuary. Ruth brings food, offers love, never asked for more than Ellie wants to give. Back on campus, the faculty debate what to do with her, pair her with grad students, stage a TED Talk, slap a title on her work. Whitmore grits his teeth. Ellie's not a circus act, just a listener, a builder. She needs space, not a spotlight. A week passes. Then, finally, Whitmore finds the address Ruth slipped him, knocks on the garage door, and steps inside. The wall is alive, dozens of sheets, drawings, diagrams, all telling the story of motion, convergence, and something even the professors hadn't seen. Ellie points to a new curve, different sequences turning at the same angle, not just meeting but pivoting. They share a rhythm, even if they don't share a destination. It's not just math, it's art. It's music. Whitmore gives her back a scan of her first diagram, marked up with his own notes. This is not a guess. This is a framework. I stayed 31 years hoping to meet someone who saw structure where none was given. Ellie doesn't cry, she just tucks the page into the wall, knowing someone finally heard her. Of course, pressure returns, papers, interviews, committees that want to own her discovery. But Ellie's learned now. She builds her own spaces, writes her own invitations. When Whitmore asks her what happens if she says no, she smiles and says, then I'll say no, not out of fear, but because it's worth saying yes to something else. On her wall, she draws an open spiral. The room that listened back. One day, Whitmore hosts a seminar in the old Rotundano stage. No microphones, just a circle and an empty chair. Ellie enters quietly, holds up her sketchbook. A spiral, a curve, a single word, still. She tells them, you don't need me to prove anything. The questions I'm asking aren't answers, yet re-invitations. And with that, she leaves. A professor, the same one who whispered, not wrong, sits in her chair, looks at her notebook, and says, I've been teaching for 30 years and never felt more like a student. That night, Ruth gives Ellie a slip of paper, signed by the faculty. You've built a language worth waiting for. The chalkboard in room 203 now reads, this seat has no name, but whoever sits here will not be interrupted. Back in her garage, Ellie pins up a new blank page. What happens after silence is heard? She smiles, turns out the light, not because her journey's finished, but because she finally knows she doesn't need to prove the room is real. Now, tell me, when was the last time you listened for the silence, instead of just the noise? Maybe the best questions aren't about getting the right answer, but about inviting the world to wonder with you. And hey, If you've ever felt like the outsider, the nobody, maybe you're just the right person to ask a question everyone else is too busy to hear. What would you do with that kind of silence? Share your story. Tell me where you'd take it next. Because maybe, just maybe, the world needs your question more than it needs another answer.